What happens when the person who built the empire decides to burn it down? I'm Kelsey Grant. I'm 29 years old. And on Christmas Eve, I went from being a valued member of the Miller family to a complete erasure, all because of one sentence spoken across a dinner table. The house was filled with polished silverware, expensive wine, and the kind of fake smiles that cost money to maintain. I waited until everyone had taken a bite of prime rib. I set my fork down as calmly as I could and said the words I'd been holding in for months. I'm pregnant. For half a second, nobody moved. My mother's hand froze around her wine glass. My sister stared at me like she was watching a film unfold. My father leaned back in his chair. His jaw went tight. His eyes turned cold in a way I had never seen before. He didn't ask who the father was. He didn't ask if I was healthy or happy. He asked nothing. Instead, he looked directly at me and said a few quiet, careful words about my baby that I won't repeat here. Then he added the sentence that changed everything. You are not part of this family anymore. You are out of the will. Years of doing everything right. Gone. Wiped out between the main course and dessert. I swallowed hard and stared at the table. I didn't scream. I reached under my chair, grabbed the small wrapped present I'd brought for him, and set it in the middle of the table. Then I pushed back my chair, wished everyone a Merry Christmas, and walked out. I sat in my car watching the Greenwich fog crawl across the windshield like a cold gray shroud. I didn't cry. Crying is a luxury for people who still have something to lose. I opened my phone and pulled up the Miller family office portal. For 10 years, I was the silent architect behind the scenes. I was the CFO who fixed every tax disaster Julian created while he was busy blowing thousands in Vegas. My father loved his legacy so much, but he'd completely forgotten who actually poured the concrete for the foundation. I navigated to the Spendthrift Trust settings. 3 steady taps. I flagged Julian's primary account for a suspicious activity report. It wasn't magic. It was a standard 48-hour internal audit freeze. I knew Julian was drowning in debt. By freezing that account, I wasn't just taking his money, I was taking away his oxygen. A moment later, my phone lit up. My mother, Celeste, was texting me, calling me ungrateful. I stared at those words until they blurred. They thought I was the help because I never bragged about what I did. They forgot I built the very walls they were currently hiding inside. They broke me back then. But today, I was the one holding the hammer. Julian panicked. The account freeze terrified him. He was drowning in a secret $200,000 gambling debt, so he decided to go for the throat. He sent a formal moral turpitude notice to my employer, claiming I was a reputation risk to the firm. He was trying to trigger a clause in our grandmother's trust that would disinherit me completely if I ever got caught up in scandalous conduct. I met my lawyer, Mary Ann, in a dimly lit corner of a downtown hotel. She handed me a stack of land deeds. That's when we found it. Julian had been using property that was held in my name within the trust as collateral for his private bridge loans. It was the inheritance burn. He wasn't just a bad brother, he was a predator feeding off my future. I told Mary Ann to let him think his plan was working. I wanted him so confident that he wouldn't see the federal trap he was walking into. They thought they were the ones in power, but I was the one who controlled the paperwork. I watched Julian at the next family brunch like a hawk. He was riding high. The expensive champagne was flowing. He truly believed his plan to disinherit me was a slam dunk. When he got up to brag to an investor, he left his physical security token sitting right next to his half-eaten lobster. I didn't touch it. I just leaned over and took a high-resolution photo of the serial number on the back. Within 10 minutes, I had sent that photo to Sterling, Julian's young, ambitious associate. I sent Sterling a confidential recruiter email from a dummy account about a high-level opportunity. He was so desperate to escape Julian's shadow that he opened the attachment on the firm's secure network. One click was all it took. A moment later, the truth flashed on my screen. Julian had been funneling money from the firm's client escrow accounts to cover his tracks. I was staring at a digital mirror of every illegal transfer, every single cent he'd stolen. They thought I was a liability. They were about to find out that Julian was a liability to the federal government. The hearing was a calculated trap. Julian was standing at the lectern performing for the board members and the observers from Vanguard. He looked at me with pure disgust and called me a low-class distraction. I sat there completely still. I waited for the moment when Julian reached his absolute peak, when he promised the board that his unwavering integrity was the firm's greatest asset. I hit enter. It triggered an accidental $500,000 wire from a high-risk offshore shell company I'd set up weeks earlier. The money went straight into Julian's personal escrow account. The wire came from a red-flagged offshore source and triggered a Financial Crimes Enforcement Network alert instantly. The doors swung open. It was a federal marshal. Julian's face went the color of wet ash. He realized too late that by accepting that money to cover his debt, he'd just signed his own federal warrant. The $100 million merger died right there on the hearing room floor. Julian walked out in heavy iron cuffs. Sterling had already signed an immunity deal and disappeared to Maine, leaving Julian to drown alone. I invoked the trust scandal clause and evicted my parents from the Greenwich estate. I walked toward the courthouse parking garage. The air finally felt clear. My mother was waiting in the shadows with a silver letter opener, screaming that I'd destroyed the family name. I didn't flinch. I just pointed to the 4K security camera blinking directly above us. I told her to go ahead and make the federal trial even easier for the prosecutor. She stopped. The letter opener clattered onto the concrete. I got into my car and drove away as police arrived to seal the Miller estate. My past was under yellow tape. My future was wide open. The judge sentenced Julian to 12 years in federal prison for wire fraud and interstate money laundering with parole eligibility only after 10 years. The court ordered massive restitution of $342,000. My father was stripped of his board seats and is currently facing a civil suit for negligence. They lost the Greenwich estate. They're living in a rented 2-bedroom condo. I spend my mornings watching the tide come in with my daughter. She's 4 months old. Her world is filled with laughter, not legacies. I've realized something that most people never truly understand. Blood does not make you family. Loyalty does. If you share a last name with people who treat you like a spare part, you are allowed to walk away. You have permission. True revenge is not loud. True revenge is the steady, silent withdrawal of the foundation you provided. When you stop holding them up, they have no choice but to fall. Now I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're asking why I waited 10 years. Why did I ever fix Julian's messes in the first place? It's easy to judge from the safety of your living room. But when you're trapped in a family dynamic this toxic, your brain is not operating on logic. It's operating on survival. Let me walk you through the psychology of this situation. I wasn't being weak. I was trapped in what we call the slot machine effect, or in psychological terms, intermittent reinforcement. Toxic families like the Millers operate exactly like a casino. Most of the time they treat you like garbage. But every once in a while, they give you a win, a small compliment, a seat at the Christmas table. You become addicted to those crumbs of hope. You keep playing. You keep fixing their disasters. You keep funding their lifestyle because your brain is convinced that if you just try a little harder, the jackpot of unconditional love will finally hit. Spoiler alert, the house always wins, and that jackpot doesn't exist. Now let's talk about the financial strategy that actually worked. I finally won because I stopped playing the family game and started playing the compliance game. First, understand the audit strategy. Scammers, even the ones who share your DNA, absolutely hate details. By flagging that suspicious activity report, I forced Julian out of the shadows and into the light of professional scrutiny. If you suspect you're being drained by someone, stop arguing, start documenting. Second, understand the investment strategy. I didn't just take my money and run. I used $500,000 of my own capital to bait a trap. In high-stakes drama and real-life litigation, sometimes you have to invest in your freedom. I didn't want a messy family court battle. I wanted a clean, permanent federal severance. Third, build the case properly. I didn't go to authorities with feelings. I went with a digital mirror of Julian's escrow records. I understood something crucial. While blood might be thicker than water, a certified paper trail is thicker than both. Here's the verdict. Your self-worth is not a brand liability just because a narcissist says so. You are not the spare in someone else's story. You are the architect of your own. I had to burn down the dynasty to realize I was the one who manufactured every single brick in that building. If you've ever been the black sheep or the spare in your family's Game of Thrones, tell us how you broke the cycle in the comments. We're building a community of survivors here. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of the win. Stay smart, stay documented, and remember, loyalty is earned, never owed.